Okay, let's just jump right in. Think about your own life for a second. How many different versions of yourself did you put on display just this week?
Right.
Do you find yourself kind of switching personalities when you go from one group to another? Like you're super relaxed and open with your family, but then Monday morning hits.
And it's a complete shift. You're professional, you're toned down, a different person almost.
Exactly. It feels like a different person.
And that phenomenon, that's exactly what we're getting into today. It's this universal thing we all do. We call them social masks, or what some behavioral scientists call code switching.
It sounds like a survival mechanism.
It is, but it's one that definitely comes with a cost.
And the sources we've been looking at really highlight that. I mean, we all get that this kind of adaptation is necessary, right? You can't act the same way at a family barbecue as you do in the boardroom. Every place has its own rules.
Right.
But the psychological strain it creates is, well, it's surprisingly high. We're talking about real stress, fatigue, and even full-on emotional burnout.
So our mission for this deep dive is, pretty straightforward. We want to unpack why this adaptation is so critical, how all this self-monitoring actually affects your mental health.
Them that blurry line.
That critical blurry line. Where does healthy social adaptation stop and, being two-faced begin?
I think we need to frame this whole discussion around that feeling, the feeling that it's natural, even mandatory, but also just exhausting.
Yes, exhausting is the word. We'll be zeroing in on things like the fear of judgment, that desire we all have to just blend in, and what it physically costs you to keep bottling things up.
So let's start with the why. Why do we feel this almost compulsive need to shift and change? I mean, that workplace example is the perfect place to start.
It really is.
The difference between being totally open with people you trust and then having to tone yourself down to maintain that professional image, the gap is just enormous.
It really is. And that shift going from, say, 100% yourself to maybe 60% yourself every single day, that takes a massive amount of internal energy.
And what about this idea of code switching? I usually hear that in a linguistic context.
It is often, but it's broader than that. It's about adjusting your style of speech, yes,
Yeah.
but also your appearance, your behavior, everything, to fit in with the dominant culture of a setting.
So it's not just about being polite.
Not at all. It's often a strategy. For safety, for upward mobility, you might use certain slang with your friends, but you consciously switch to more formal language with a client.
So the real driver isn't just social grace. It's a strategy for self-preservation or even gain.
Exactly. The core reasons are deeply psychological. They're all about protection and acceptance.
Yeah.
If we ask that perfect question, why do people hide parts of their real personality in public? The answers are pretty consistent.
And what's the number one reason that pops up? The main motivator for all this self-censorship?
The big one is the fear of judgment, hands down. It's this constant worry that if the real you slips out, you could face, I don't know, professional consequences, social rejection,
Or just criticism?
or just criticism. Yeah. And people internalize that risk, so they start actively hiding things they see as flaws or weaknesses,
Yeah.
all because they don't want to stick out or, cause a fuss.
That makes perfect sense. We're always sort of negotiating our social currency. And if showing vulnerability costs you something, you instinctively put up a wall.
Precisely. And that avoidance strategy leads directly to, well, putting on an act. It's a performance. It's designed to help you fit in, keep the peace, and just avoid being criticized.
Think about emotional neutrality at work.
Yes. You could be having the worst morning of your life, but you walk in and paste on a smile, a cheerful mask, because that's the professional expectation.
It's the definition of emotional labor. The research actually has a great little anecdote for this, that feeling of being fake at, say, a formal party.
Oh, yes. The classic scenario. You find yourself laughing way too hard at a joke you don't actually find funny.
Or nodding along enthusiastically to an opinion you completely disagree with. Yeah.
Exactly. Just to blend in with the group. And then afterwards, you feel that discomfort, that cognitive dissonance. You weren't honest with them, sure, but you also weren't honest with yourself.
And that feeling of performing, of having to watch every single thing you say and do, that's the signal, right? That's you putting on the social mask.
That's the signal.
Okay, so let's dig into that idea specifically. The social mask, it sounds like it's more than just adapting. It's about hiding your inner world.
It is.
So what is a social mask in this psychological context? What's its primary function?
A social mask is basically a deliberate act of hiding your true feelings. You show only what's acceptable or, palatable to the people you're with. It's a carefully built front.
And its purpose, is it always a bad thing, deceitful?
Not at all. Its function is really dual. On one hand, it's a tool for protection. It protects you from judgment, from getting hurt. But on the other hand, it's used to keep the social peace.
Avoiding conflict, smoothing things over.
Right. You might mask your annoyance during a tense family dinner just to keep things harmonious. That's not really deception. It's more like boundary management.
So it's a tool for navigating the world. But like any tool, if you lean on it too heavily,
You can get hurt.
Right.
And this is where it gets psychologically dangerous. The research has a pretty stark warning about the risk of an identity crisis.
how does that happen?
It happens when someone keeps that performance up for too long, across too many parts of their life. When you spend all your time trying to be who others want you to be, that's the classic people pleaser trap you.
Yeah.
You start to drift away from your true self.
You forget who you actually are.
Literally. The research warns that people can forget who they are because their real identity gets so muffled by the performance, it just leads to this profound sense of emptiness.
That's a terrifying thought, that you could stop recognizing yourself. But we have to draw a line here because adapting isn't the same as being dishonest. Where do the sources say that line is? Between healthy adaptation and just being, well, two-faced.
And that distinction is so important. It all comes down to intent.
Intent.
Yeah. Acting differently in public, changing your tone, using less slang at work. That's normal social adaptation. It's about context. Being two-faced, though, is about manipulation.
So how is that manipulation defined? What's the specific action?
The research says you cross that line when you pretend to be kind to someone's face, but then you immediately turn around and start talking behind their back.
Undermining them, spreading negativity.
Exactly. The action shifts from just managing your own boundaries to actively deceiving and harming someone else. One protects the self, the other harms others.
That makes perfect sense. Self-protection versus external manipulation.
That's the core of it.
Okay, let's shift gears now to the massive toll this all takes. The sources are unanimous that constantly adjusting yourself is just exhausting. So mentally, what is actually happening? How does this wear us down?
It's more than just feeling tired. It's a deep cognitive drain. The
Yeah.
mechanism is constant self-monitoring. When you're wearing a mask, you're doing two things at once. You're performing the role, and you're actively suppressing your real response. That takes an incredible amount of mental bandwidth. It's like running two operating systems in your brain at the same time.
Which just sounds draining on its own.
It is. And that active suppression is what the sources call bottling things up. You're forcing down frustration, disagreement, all these negative emotions.
And then that energy has to go somewhere.
It doesn't just disappear. No, it builds up. Over time, that suppressed energy turns into chronic stress, which can show up as anxiety, irritability, and eventually emotional burnout.
And burnout is more than just being tired.
Oh, yeah. It's a profound state of mental and emotional exhaustion. It just cripples your motivation.
It's like trying to hold a really heavy weight an inch off the ground all day long. Your muscles are just going to give out eventually.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And as if that wasn't hard enough, now we have the digital world, which basically forces people to wear masks that are even stronger and more rigid.
Social media, the ultimate stage for the perfect you.
Precisely. Social media creates what the research calls a fake reality. These platforms are designed to make you perform and edit your life. You only show the good stuff, the perfect dinner, the big promotion.
And you hide all the struggles, the bad days.
You meticulously hide them to project this flawless image.
And that online persona, that glossy version of you, creates this impossible gap between who you pretend to be and who you actually are.
The huge dissonance. You're pouring all this energy into maintaining an avatar that has nothing to do with your real mental state. The performance online becomes a second full-time job.
The research offers this really powerful, almost painful real-life scenario for when those two worlds collide.
Yes, it's a great example. So imagine someone has this perfectly curated online image. They look confident, successful, always happy. But in real life, they're struggling. They're stressed, lost.
And then what happens? Someone calls them out.
Exactly. A coworker, maybe trying to be funny, says something in front of everyone like, wow, you seem really stressed. You're not the same person as your Instagram. In that one moment, that person has to face the huge gap between the mask they project and the reality they're hiding. That kind of public reveal can be just devastating.
That would be so jarring. It would crush your confidence. You'd realize the very mask you created to protect yourself is now betraying you.
It absolutely chips away at your self-worth. If the whole point was to gain acceptance, but now the mask itself is being called out as fake, the whole system just collapses.
And that brings us right back to the central problem we have to solve here. The tension between safety and authenticity.
The core push and pull.
So let's just ask that fundamental question. What actually earns more respect and what's healthier for us? Being completely real or adapting perfectly. And we have to admit, you can't just say everything you think all the time.
You can't. And the findings are pretty consistent. Being real is generally respected more, and it's definitely healthier for your long-term well-being. However,
There's a big however.
it is not always safer.
So moderation.
Precisely. The research really calls for moderation. In some high-stakes professional environments, you just have to watch what you say. You have to limit vulnerability to protect your job or your reputation.
So if there's a clear trade-off, you're choosing between your mental health and, say, your career safety. You pick which risk you're willing to take.
That's it exactly. But there's a strong counterpoint to that safety argument. Wearing a mask all the time actively damages your confidence.
How so?
Well, if you constantly feel like you have to hold back your real thoughts, if you never let people see the real you can't form deep connections. You're never truly known by anyone.
The ultimate isolation. If the price of safety is being lonely and having no self-confidence, that's a really heavy price to pay.
It is. So the central insight is this. The goal isn't total honesty, which can be reckless. And it's not total concealment, which is self-destructive.
The goal is to find a balance.
To find a balance.
Yeah.
A place where you're safe enough to function, but authentic enough to actually thrive. It's about being appropriate for the context without becoming a fraud.
That really is the key takeaway, isn't it? Finding that sustainable balance. So to kind of synthesize everything we've unpacked, adaptation and code switching are normal, even necessary. The social mask is for protection, for peace.
Well,
But the constant performance, especially amplified online, leads to burnout, stress, and maybe even losing your own identity.
and that brings us to a final sort of provocative thought. It's something the research encourages us to think about regarding trust.
Okay.
If you see someone who changes their behavior drastically depending on the group, they're one person with their boss, a totally different person with their friends, a third version with their family, does that automatically mean they can't be trusted?
That's the easy assumption to make, right? But maybe too easy.
It's a heavy question because we tend to equate consistency with trustworthiness.
Right.
But what if there's another way to look at it? What if that dramatic shifting isn't about deception?
What is it then?
Maybe it's just a sign of profound and deeply tiring social adaptation. Maybe it just signals sheer exhaustion from navigating a world where their survival or their success depends entirely on which mask they put on at any given moment.
So we're left with that question. Is it a sign of untrustworthiness or just exhaustion?
Exactly. And it's a good question to carry with you as you move between your own groups today.